And welcome to each and every one of you. And thank you so much for joining our special session today titled Building Stronger Teacher Pipelines Through University District Partnerships. The teacher shortage has been a prominent issue in education across the country since the pandemic and has persisted in many communities struggling to recruit and retain quality and well-prepared instructors for early elementary students. CGLR has focused multiple GLR Learning Tuesdays on solutions to this issue. We have highlighted teacher coaching and support as a big bet-worthy approach that provides teachers at all levels with opportunities to both troubleshoot and learn with colleagues while also gaining input and tips from master teachers who can share tailored advice and guidance. And we are now towards the end of October, which teachers report is the hardest month as the excitement of the new school year has worn away and they need to deal with administrative guidance, sticking to curriculum and understanding students' individual needs while also juggling parent relationships and scheduling challenges. It is this juggling that leads many teachers to burn out quickly. The support that teachers need can also come from partnerships between K-12 school districts and universities, teacher preparation programs. When these two entities intentionally come together, they can build a common vision for preparing and supporting new teachers from recruitment through the first years of teaching. Teacher educators provide the preparation experience needed, especially by novice teachers, including coursework and practice opportunities. With this comprehensive preparation and support, novice teachers are 2 to 3 times more likely to stay in the profession, and seasoned teachers receive ongoing support, tips, and practice opportunities. And most importantly, all students receive more rigorous, inclusive, grade-level learning experiences. And today we have the special opportunity to hear from two of these successful partnerships between university teacher prep programs and local schools and districts about how they establish and how they cultivate and sustain their work together in support of teachers. And first, we will hear from CGLR's important partners at Deans for Impact, who are working to ensure that every student has a high quality, prepared, and well-supported teacher. And we are lucky to have a member of Deans for Impact moderating our session today. Valerie Sakamura is the executive director and co-founder of Deans for Impact, a national nonprofit organization with a mission to ensure all students access well-prepared teachers. Valerie brings a belief that great teachers have incredible power to honor and lift up children and 15 years of experience supporting leaders and teams to strengthen their impact. And I am now honored to welcome and briefly introduce our esteemed panelists with us today. And I'll just say, rather than our usual alphabetical order, I'm going to introduce them representing their amazing partnerships. And again, please note we've already posted full bios in the chat. So I'm just going to be previewing who we have with us today, and we'll make sure that that link is posted again for those who are just joining us. So Tracy Hujiak-Clark is the director of the School of Inclusive Teacher Education at Bowling Green State University in Ohio. She is passionate about collaborating with others to develop well-prepared educators to serve all children in our classrooms. She has spent 30 years in education as a science teacher, teacher educator, and advocate for teachers. Zeb Kello is a principal in Bowling Green City Schools at Crim Elementary School in Bowling Green, Ohio. He's a graduate from Bowling Green State University with a degree in administrative specialist in curriculum instruction and professional development. He has served 8 years in Bowling Green City Schools. For our next partnership, we have Willis Walter II. He's currently the Dean/Associate Professor for Virginia State University's College of Education. Prior to joining the faculty at Virginia State University, he served as a public school classroom teacher in Leon County, Florida, and Vestavia Hills, Alabama. He also served as a school administrator in Childersburg and Birmingham, Alabama. Dr. Melody D. Hackney is superintendent of the Hopewell City Schools and was named Virginia's Superintendent of the Year in 2021. Hip hip hooray for that. As the chief education leader of her small impoverished school division, Dr. Hackney faced many challenges from the start of her service as Hopewell superintendent. In order to turn Hopewell's situation around, Dr. Hackney focused her students and staff members on 3 things: what was being taught and how, keeping what was working and eliminating what was not, and creating success by providing students with new opportunities and experiences. So welcome to all of you. We so look forward to engaging with you and learning from you. And now I'm very excited to turn it over to Valerie to get the conversation going.
Thanks, Emily. And hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here with all of you today. And I'm really excited for you to get to hear from the amazing panelists that we have. I'll do a quick little bit about me and about Deans for Impact, and then dive into our questions. So about me, as Emily mentioned, I'm the executive director of Deans for Impact, where I've been for the last 9 years. I'm originally from Hawaii, which my team will tell you I represent proudly and only occasionally obnoxiously, but currently live in Colorado, where I love being in the mountains and outside. I'm the proud mom of two multiracial daughters, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. And our third child, a boy, is due in 2 weeks. So when we talk about early success for children, it is very deeply personal to me. And I think it's especially fitting that we're having this conversation in October. As Emily mentioned, it is such a hard month for teachers in general, and especially for new teachers. So many teachers I've met have told me about their October stories from their first year, including someone on my team who shared with me what she called her Rocktober story about going out to her car during her lunch break, locking the doors, sitting there crying for 25 minutes, and then kind of pulling herself together and going back into the school building. She was so overwhelmed trying to really learn the ropes of what it meant to be a teacher. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I'm looking forward to this conversation to explore ways that we can better support novice teachers through intentional partnerships between K-12 schools and districts and teacher prep programs so we can build healthy, sustainable pipelines into the profession. Let me just say a few words about DFI and what brings us to this conversation. We are a nonprofit organization anchored in the belief that every child deserves a well-prepared teacher. And I love this second sentence on this slide. Brilliance is equally distributed, but quality instruction is not, because it's a reminder that kids don't have equitable access to great teachers. We know students of color, for example, are more likely to be in the classroom of a novice teacher, those with the least experience. And so we are working with teacher preparation programs, both within and outside of universities, to make sure every new teacher is ready to engage students in rigorous and affirming learning experiences as they enter the classroom. And we really focus on educator preparation because we recognize that is such a pivotal point in a teacher's career in terms of shaping their mindsets, beliefs, and practices, how they see and honor students in their fullness, where they gain some fundamental knowledge about the science of learning and the science of teaching reading and math, and some really kind of foundational core instructional practices. On the next slide, you'll see we work across 3 levels of the system because we believe it takes all of these players working together in order to move the needle for kids. So we work with leaders of educator preparation programs to make equitable instructional improvement a priority in their programs. We work with teams of faculty and those that train teachers to help them redesign coursework and clinical experiences. And we work with policymakers and advocates to really push for policies that create more affordable and practice-based pathways into the profession. And on the next slide, you can see a little bit more about our reach. We've worked with about 240 educator preparation programs across 45 states since our inception a decade ago, ultimately impacting over 71,000 future teachers. So on the next slide, I want to just frame a little bit about uh, more about this conversation. One of the things that we see as we work with ed prep programs around the country is how challenging the transition from pre-service is to in-service teaching. And you can see that borne out in some of the retention numbers. 40 to 50% of teachers leave the profession within 5 years. They're faced with supporting students to meet rigorous standards, increasingly diverse student populations, working many hours in places that can be politically charged and weighed down by funding uncertainty. But as Emily mentioned at the start, we know that teachers who receive great preparation are 2 to 3 times more likely to stay in the profession. But it can be challenging for prep programs to keep up with ever shifting demands while trying to recruit more people into the profession. but districts and teacher prep programs don't have to face these challenges alone. And that's why we're so excited to talk about the opportunity when you bring districts and prep programs together in partnership. So I'm excited to introduce two strong partnerships who are supporting new teachers and students in really effective ways. And as I do so, please share in the chat what's top of mind for you, what you're hoping to get out of this session. What are the biggest opportunities you see in your own communities to strengthen partnerships between teacher prep programs and school districts? So pop those in the chat so we can see why folks are here and what they're interested in. And I will say a little bit more about the two partnerships that we're going to hear from today. First, I'd like to introduce Tracy Huja-Clark from Bowling Green State University and Zeb Kello from Krim Elementary at Bowling Green City Schools, which is based in Northwest Ohio. These partners have worked really closely in recent years to mobilize aspiring teachers enrolled at BGSU as high dosage tutors for students at Krim Elementary School. While Krim's teachers were at first unsure about bringing in aspiring teachers as tutors, they became bought in over time as they saw their students receiving valuable support. And at the same time, BGSU's aspiring teachers were gaining meaningful practice opportunities to build relationships with students, to try on instructional strategies, and to really become better prepared to enter the profession. And the second partnership we're going to hear from today, Dr. Willis Walter from Virginia State University and Dr. Melanie Hackney from Hopewell City Public Schools joining us from Central Virginia. VSU and Hopewell have worked together in a number of ways and recently have worked together to launch a registered teacher apprenticeship program to recruit and prepare more teachers coming from their local community. It's allowed teaching to become a more affordable pathway for Hopewell's teaching assistants and paraprofessionals. And they're working together to make adjustments on both sides to ensure the program is meeting local needs of students and schools and aligned to a shared vision for preparing high quality future teachers. We've been really fortunate at Deans for Impact to work with these partnerships over the years. The leaders at both BGSU and VSU have been involved in DFI's Impact Academy Leadership Fellowship, and we've been providing instructional support to the teacher educators in both partnership efforts. So we'll start with hearing a little bit more from Tracy and Zeb in Bowling Green, Ohio. So tell us a little bit more about the partnership, what you were trying to accomplish, how it got started, what it looks like now, and what kind of results you're seeing.
Right.
Well, I'm Zeb Kello. Thanks for talking and asking the question, Valerie. It literally started with kind of a conversation and collaboration about how we could figure out better ways to expose BGSU students to the working environment of real schools and what that kind of looks like with tutoring. Tracy, you want to go ahead and chime in?
We have had a long-term relationship with BG City Schools, but this was an opportunity for us to try to engage in some of the statewide priorities around high dosage tutoring. Because BG City is right next door to us and because we've had a long-standing partnership, Krim Elementary was one of the first places we reached out to for this initiative, but certainly they have had our students in other capacities as well. But because we needed to be in a place 3 days a week for a minimum of 30 minutes with each group of students, we wanted to make sure that we were starting in a place that we knew well and knew our partners were on board already with the science of reading initiatives that were happening with the state as well.
Yeah, so from there, it was one of those conversations where we had phasing out of COVID, online tutors that would meet with some of our students in the afternoons, virtually through Chromebooks to get some tutoring. And we kind of said, oh, okay, I don't know if this is quite working. And then it was one of the professors came to me, Dr. Thomas Roberts, said, hey, I have this crazy idea. What if we were able to bring live tutors into your building to be able to help out? And that was a big moment. I said, okay, talk to me, and in that conversation, essentially, it was just under 60 students that would come in, BGSU tutors who would be working alongside of our teachers and learning the ways of what they're doing in the classroom, with the whole focus and idea of providing both intervention and enrichment for our students. At CREM, you saw a picture of our building there. Nearly 70% of our students live poverty level. We're a title building. We have about 30% of our students as transient. So we have a lot of challenging behaviors, a lot of challenging situations with our students. And, it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, I'm listening, let's talk. And that's where that conversation started. And from there, it kind of blossomed.
So we were able to work with Seb and his teachers to figure out what curriculum they were using so that we could be using a similar curriculum here at BGSU. Our faculty members did lots of site visits to make sure that everything was running smoothly. And I would also say that teachers from Crim Elementary also came over to our classrooms here at BGSU to talk about things like their PBIS model and other things to make the transition to all of these tutors literally invading the school, work as smoothly as possible for this endeavor, which I think has been going pretty well.
Yeah. And if you could go ahead and show the slide there, it talks about commitment, Valerie. Really the big thing coming back to my teachers is I have young teachers, and what I didn't want to do is have some of them feel all of a sudden this weight or burden of, okay, wait, I'm trying to take care of all these students with all these needs, and now I have some BGSU students who are in here and they're supposed to help me. How's that going to work? Right. So we had to kind of go through the process with the conversation about, listen, you're not here babysitting them, you're going to be using them. So what was nice is we actually had our best way to say it, professors come in and embed themselves over here 2 or 3 times a week, watching what's going on and being part of those conversations. And, being in a situation where we have a strong teachers union, I had to go and kind of talk my way through that and say, okay, here's where it is. If we can make sure that our students, our Crim Elementary students are getting their needs met, and we have high quality teachers coming in to meet those needs, I mean, then isn't this a win? So if you look, I actually say, like, one of the things I could tell my teachers is, I know you need paid more. I know you need more pay. I know you need more time. I can't give that to you, but what if I can give you some really good, high quality teachers? And that was where all of a sudden the dialogue shifted. And so in that conversation, I said, plan as though you would just when you differentiate for all your groups. Now you can actually have a body, a person who has an educational background that's strong to be able to go ahead and sit down with those students, drive conversation and discussion to make sure that learning is happening, and that's where it was really kind of a win. What was nice too, like I said, it's twofold for me. One, I want to make sure I'm supporting my teachers as much as I can and show some growth with my students, but I also wanted to make sure that the teachers that we have coming in here, the BGSU tutors, get the full effect of what it is to be a teacher. I think sometimes there's this grandiose idea that I'm going to go in and tell the kids everything that they need to do and it'll be done, and homework, everyone, right? We know that's not the reality. I think some of the most enriching conversations happen whenever those BGSU tutors were able to sit with the team of teachers to go through a PLC with them, to go through their learning communities, or what we call our TBTs, teacher-based teams, to discuss data, to talk about what they think the next steps are, to have those BGSU tutors to be the problem-solving individuals to figure out what needs to happen next. So kind of thinking about this, and I'm going to go through these slides pretty quick. If you could go to the next slide. All right, if you look, I want to just kind of point this out as some growth, because this is two-part, right? I'm selling this as a, hey, my teachers, I think this will work for us. Let's continue on. So you can look to see where our scores are. They're not great, around 50% there, 2021, 22, staying pretty consistent there, 22, 23. That's when we're starting to get a full enrollment of the tutors. And now if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide, if you notice, we have dramatic jump up to the 70%. with our teachers really all of a sudden connecting and saying, we're seeing this growth. If you want to go ahead, actually, if you want to jump down, I think there's 4 slides. You'll see a little, one more maybe. Keep going. Okay, one thing I want to point out here, if you notice, we shifted quite a bit. So if you can go back 1 slide, you'll see where a lot of our students that are in our school, the cell that we have for my staff, for my teachers, we had a lot of kids with their state testing showing up as limited and basic. You know, we spent so much of our effort working and trying to get those kids higher and higher and higher. And, you know, it's one of those things where we want to see that growth. And unfortunately, what happens is as we spend so much time working with our students in math groups and with reading groups, what happens is our accomplished and our advanced students, those higher level students and those grade level students, sometimes end up getting put on the back burner. So if you look at the next slide here for our most recent data, you'll see that we've kind of flipped this in a large way. So we have a large group that's all of a sudden scoring accomplished. And that's because one of the things I told my teachers and working through is I want them to be good quality people working with the kids who have the most need. They're teachers, they're seasoned, even if it's 4 years, they have 4 years teaching experience. So we see them now able to lock into those students that are the limited, the basic, and then have these other BGSU tutors come in, able to work with these kids that are your bubble kids, your average kids, and the higher kids, and watch that growth. And if you go to the last slide here, you actually get to see that nice little trend data there for the last 5 years. So what's nice is it's no longer a question about, you know, do I have to take someone? It is a conversation about when do I have to, you know, when do they come? I want them to come. And so that's been a really positive thing for us.
Deb, I really
And
appreciate you sharing the data here. Tracy, I would love to hear from you kind of um, from the student teacher candidate standpoint. What are you hearing from them or seeing from them that they're getting out of this partnership?
So I think one of the biggest things that our students say is how much their confidence has grown. So they have the opportunity to work in these smaller groups with a practicing teacher, as well as with our faculty on site. So their confidence is growing by leaps and bounds. So they're very nervous at the beginning, but they build that confidence over time. The other thing that the students report back is their ability to really dive into those TBT meetings that Zeb was referring to. So really looking at the data alongside of veteran teachers to make those data-driven decisions. In a classroom at Bowling Green State University, we can work with fake data and we can give them scenarios, but the live, they actually know the students that they're working with and being able to see the impact that really looking at that data and how that by really analyzing the data and making curricular changes, they can really impact change. And it's happening right before their eyes. And it doesn't take long for them to see that happen. And that's really impacting what our students are learning. And the application, so I think someone asked in the Q&A, I didn't have a chance to type it as I was jumping back in. They're learning about science of reading here at BGSU, but they're actually able to apply some of those skills and see how those skills are really playing out in student growth. So.
I think one of the things you mentioned was having the same curriculum as they're using at Crim Elementary. So how is that? What are you seeing the benefits in terms of having them able to practice that before they actually go into the classroom?
So being able to have that curriculum available here for them to practice with, for them to talk with a partner in their education classes here at BGSU, to be looking at the same possible materials. Oh, did you try that? Did I try this? They're not going out to multiple school districts that have 6 different curriculum. We're able to really hone in on what some of the regular curriculum is, as well as the intervention curriculum. What can I be using? What additional resources are there? So having those manipulatives here, having opportunity to really deep dive into that curriculum allows students to really focus in. And we sort of sometimes refer to it here at BGSU as the Pinterest problem. Then they go and look for everything to try to solve their problem. That's not always the best thing to do. So really narrowing their focus into the curriculum that BG City is using has helped them really focus in on the important things rather than trying to find the thing that's going to fit their something outside that's going to fit their needs. So.
Yeah, and I think that that's a big thing. You talk about the Pinterest problem. I talk about teacher pay teachers, you know,
Same thing, yes.
yeah, where they're finding these things. It's interesting to all of a sudden, like, to actually have some guidance from a seasoned classroom teacher say, okay, great, this is nice, but what do you want them to do in the end? And have them go through that process to think. One of the other things, and I feel like this needs to be mentioned, that yes, going through that 5-step process of analyzing data, figuring out what the next steps are very valuable. The other piece is they also see teachers be real people, and have that realization that, what, it's not all sunshine and lollipops, that some days are pretty hard. And some days I'm not going to be able to teach my lesson because of the experience this child had last night. I need to be there to comfort them and walk alongside of them. And so what I kind of see, I think this is part of the culture, I think that helps a lot, is I think those young teachers now kind of get a grip about, okay, this is what teaching kind of is now. And, I need to do my best to help, but I can't take those things home with me. And I have to have a support system and network of good quality teachers I can work with and walk alongside.
Well, I appreciate this overview. I'm going to turn it to Dr. Walter and Dr. Hackney for a little bit of time to hear more from them, but then we'll bring you both back in. I have some questions for both partnerships. So, Dr. Willis, Dr. Hackney, can you tell the group a little bit more about your partnership? You all aren't focusing on bringing teacher candidates in as tutors. What you all have been focusing on is the launch of this registered apprenticeship program, building on a very long history of partnership between the two entities. But tell us a little bit more about that partnership, what you were hoping to accomplish through launching this registered apprenticeship in teaching. What does it look like now? What are you seeing?
Well, I'm happy to begin. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Happy to be with you. Just to provide a little bit of context, I'm in my 10th year as superintendent in Hopewell, and my 20th as a superintendent in Virginia. I was privileged to start my tenure in Hopewell immediately with a partnership with Virginia State University, where we had received one of 7 National Wallace Foundation awards to sort of rethink the principal pipeline and the program curriculum for better alignment between our universities, preparing our administrators, and the unique and ever-changing needs of our school districts. So that was the beginning of what has been an absolutely wonderful 10-year partnership with Virginia State. Virginia State serves a really, really diverse region. We have suburban, we have rural, we have the good and the bad of inner cities like Hopewell and Petersburg and Richmond. And I'm obviously here to speak to Hopewell, but our problems are similar. We have unique needs, and it's important to recognize that, because at the end of the day, our successful partnership with the university is because they understand those needs, and they recognize that they're here to serve us while we're here to also serve them, and kind of it works in both directions. But as I said, I'm going to speak to Hopewell. We have a 30-year sad, but I guess deserved, maybe not really, but reputation in this city, and that our students and our neighbors don't always appreciate and certainly don't deserve. We have gun violence, we have drugs, we have gangs, we have addiction, and we have, sadly, at least at the beginning of my time here, a real pervasive atmosphere at many, many levels, including our children, of low expectations. So we're really trying to work together and to change that through both education, through obviously partnerships and opportunities, and honestly, hope, giving hope to kids in our city. We have 7 schools. We serve approximately 4,000 students. And probably the most important part of our demographics is that 91% of those babies live in poverty. 91% of our students live in poverty. And as you can imagine and already know, with that comes lots of unique challenges and opportunities. So Probably not surprising, we struggle to find and keep good, high quality teachers. And we've worked really hard, both independently and with the university, to dramatically improve our teacher retention over the past several years. But as we all know, in this time, we're all facing finding good teachers, much less highly qualified licensed teachers right now, is at a crisis point, not just for the Commonwealth of Virginia, but for our country. And I'm sure so many of you. So that's where this particular opportunity and one of many partnerships that we share with Virginia State sort of comes in. So I don't want to, I'm going to wrap up the negatives that I've already referenced that are a part of, the unique needs that we have in this, what is really a wonderful city that has much, much potential and is right on the verge of transformation. But there is a huge positive in some of those descriptors of our struggles. And that is that we have some amazing rock star teaching assistants that don't just live here, they love it here. They believe they are called to this place and to this work. And they have amazing skill sets and hearts for our students and their unique needs. Sadly, I don't know what you pay your TAs, but we don't pay ours enough. And sadly, they can't afford the coursework to become a teacher. Many of them have associate's degrees. A lot of them can be close, but they do not have the means to be able to take it to the next level and ultimately become a teacher. So many of them are homegrown, which is also an incredible plus. And some of them at one time were the babies that we now need them to help grow and develop. They bleed Blue Devil, blue and gold. And with our financial help and the flexibility that Virginia State can provide, can and will be amazing teachers that we've grown on our own. So we've been provided some assistance from our Department of Education and some monies to both incent this for them and to obviously pay for their coursework. And we enthusiastically entered into another extended partnership with VSU to grow our own through a teacher apprenticeship program. So I'm going to pivot to Dr. Walter, and then I'll come back in just a moment after he talks a little bit about the technical part of our grant and our partnership from the university lens.
Yes, thank you, Superintendent Hackney. I think really the only thing that I really want to emphasize is that understanding the community, we had to buy into and make sure that we were selecting individuals that were going to be longtime givers to that community. And your teachers' aides, the paraprofessionals in that area were ideal candidates for that. And so Hopewell City Schools identified the candidates for the most part. What we had to provide is the flexibility to make sure that they were getting the coursework that they needed to bridge the gap, many of them with community college hours over the years that have not necessarily led to a particular degree or associate's degree. We had to help advise them as to the right coursework to get them over the first hump, which is to get a gen ed underneath their under their belt, and then focus on while also focusing on, I should say, teaching in the classroom almost immediately, those things that they have somewhat probably taken for granted because they've been in the classroom, but have not necessarily learned the vernacular and vocabulary associated with some of the things that they were doing, helping bridge that gap between who they are and what they bring to the table to where we wanted them to go. And so for us, it was about making sure we didn't take any shortcuts. There are lots of programs where school divisions have given certain individuals with certain backgrounds either a local license or a temporary license and allowed them to teach. What we wanted to do is make sure that we were giving them the same quality education that our traditional pathway provided. And so for us, it was about making sure that we were flexible enough to give them those classes, do some course work asynchronously, hence the reason for hybrid educational residency opportunity, HERO for short, because we really do think that these individuals are heroes, not only to their peers that wish they could have gone through something like this, but also through to hopefully a new set of future educators that will be taking advantage of this kind of opportunity, this kind of apprenticeship that stair steps them to becoming a teacher as early as maybe even their senior year in high school, in which we can provide some dual enrollment courses to them early on, as well as making sure that this is an inexpensive pathway to becoming a teacher. The one thing that I would also add is that we were able to make this even more special through partnering with Deans for Impact when we offered the professional development of learning by scientific design, because that also gives them some quality skills that they can immediately use on day one in their classrooms, and making sure that students were providing their own knowledge around their education and giving them some real credit for what they bring to the classroom. And so that modeling also, I think, bodes well for us long term in keeping a program like this continued.
And Melanie, I know one of the things that we just heard was how important it is to try to make this affordable and financially feasible for folks going through this program. Talk to us a little bit about the salary scale that you've been able to put in place.
Thanks. Yeah, we really wanted to elevate these individuals because they're making a tremendous commitment, and you know, they're going to be working harder with both their work life school balance, but also trying to blend some of what they're learning in the classrooms with what they bring back or learning in their courses, what they bring back to the classrooms. So we decided to create an instructor classification where they're still an apprentice, they're not yet a teacher, but they are elevated both with pay and with status. And in addition to that, every semester that they complete, they're granted a raise. There's a 2% increase every semester they complete. So there's added incentive to stay the course and finish the work. We've provided specialized professional development and training to them. We've also assigned mentors to them. We want to surround them by our exemplar teachers. And so we very, very carefully built upon existing relationships, but also married the best of our best to help model for them and support them. So yeah, I think probably the one thing that we really felt strongly about recognizing right out of the gate is this is not going to be easy. They're still working for us. They're still at work all day long. They're still dealing with the normal work home life balance. And then they're taking courses. And thanks to Dr. Walter and his staff, they have shown in tremendous flexibility and grace. But at the end of the day, they're battling three things now instead of just two. So we wanted to build in incremental incentives to not just keep them in the game, but also reward them for their hard work. So I hope that answers your question, Ellen.
Yeah, and Melissa, can you just tell us a little bit more about how the program is structured? How long are they in it? It sounds like the courses are happening asynchronously. Just give us a few more details about that.
So yeah, in theory, it's a 2-year program in which we've been granted the opportunity to get students through the program over the next 2 years. But it's really individually shaped. So somebody could finish earlier than that, might be a little bit longer than that, depending on how their coursework and what else they need in order to get both a degree as well as a license in the area in which they're teaching. Someone asked, I think, in the chat about the syllabi the syllabi, therefore, had to isn't changed, but some of the identified courses and or I should say not courses, the assignments, we had to kind of restructure based on what we already saw candidates either being exposed to in the classroom or in looking at what they would already bring to the conversation, having been a teacher's assistant for a long time. And so there were certain things that we didn't necessarily need to emphasize as much as other things. But the courses for the most part have not changed. The syllabi have not changed. There are some assignments that we would change a little bit, largely in part because they're in a classroom, whereas other candidates had not been even exposed to some of this information if they weren't in a classroom in recent years. The last thing I would say is that when we really looked at our program, again, we focus on knowledge of self first, then understanding the trauma of others. And then the third part of our program is being culturally responsive, bridging from where they are to where we want them to be at the end of the curriculum. And so we had to do the same thing for both these candidates in making sure that they understood their role as an educator and what bias they sometimes bring to the conversation. And understanding that, then they can change and modify their own expectations and their work in the classroom accordingly. And so for us, it was about making sure that we stayed true to the special tenets of our own program, but bring those individuals along as they really saw fit as those individuals progress in their individual way.
Thanks for sharing that overview. I'm going to invite Zeb and Tracy back into the conversation. I have a question for both partnerships. Partnerships aren't easy to get off the ground and sustain. So I'm curious, as you all launched the partnership and got into it, what were the things that you had to negotiate with each other? And what were some of the barriers and challenges you had to overcome? And we'll start with the folks, the Bowling Green folks.
Well, I think my experience with good partnerships is trust building, making sure that it's not BGSU saying this is what needs to happen, but trying to figure out what the needs of our partners are and how we might be a good partner in that. So there was a lot of negotiation and what time might work for our tutors to come. We had a specific schedule. Our students were available at certain times. That didn't work at Crim Elementary School, so we had to come back to BG and literally turn our whole schedule on its head. Anyone that's familiar with universities know those schedules are set in stone like 18 months in advance. So that was a bit of a risk taking, and it was a bit overwhelming for our students at first. What do you mean my schedule isn't looking like what it was going to be 6 months ago? But I think it has paid off in the leap of faith that we had there, but only because we had other projects in the past that had worked well. I think that trust building and continued conversation, I think, is really important. Zeb, I'll look to you.
Yeah, I would add on to that it was, it was nice I'll just be honest, we got to the place where there were 3 or 4 of us that were on text messages, kind of bouncing ideas, trying to figure out how to make all the pieces fit, because I knew that this would be a win for my students. It'd be a win for the BGSU students as well, as they actually get to be in the field working. So just put this perspective, I have about 26 staff members. So to bring 57 more adults into the building was quite a bit. So we had to kind of go through and rethink, like, where are we going to use parking? So I had to reach out to even my community partners for using parking over at a local church here, and how to kind of structure areas for teachers to have work time. So after they would get done, these BGSU students would need to have some time to sit down with some of the curriculum and be in a room large enough to be able to do that, because sometimes our classrooms, even though students are on encore or a special, the classrooms are still being used. So there were some logistical pieces that we had to figure out, but in the end, what was nice is everyone realized that, the heart of the matter is we want to see what's best for our students, and not just our students, but BGSU students and our Bowling Green City school teachers as well.
What about in Hopewell, in the registered apprenticeship program? What were some of the things you had to negotiate, or some of the barriers and challenges you all had to work through?
I would say, and I know this sounds, weird, but I can't really speak to challenges. We really work well together, and I think that is rooted in years of understanding what is uniquely Hopewell and how the university meets our needs, and we want to deliver back to them good, strong candidates to go to college at Virginia State right here next door. But I will say this, and I think I might have answered this differently pre-COVID, but I will tell you, I think our greatest challenge probably in my career, and it's facing 40 years now, so it's been a long time, but has been the needs of that have changed so dramatically, not just in our students, but in our staff. And, you heard Dr. Walter talk about a culturally responsive pedagogy and talk about trauma. These are words that are oftentimes, yes, affiliated with poverty, but what we are seeing and have seen, and I know there's people on this webinar that have experienced the same thing in our students since COVID, and the trauma and the isolation, and heaven only knows what else our babies experienced during that almost 2 years away from, in our community, their safe haven, which is their schoolhouse. We have to change how we support both the adults and the students, because the world is different. Their world is different. Their stress is different. Their mental health has been dramatically impacted. So I think the answer from my lens to the question was in Dr. Walter's previous response, that they have been willing to be flexible. The old stuff still remains, best practices and research-based strategies and all that, but we have different students and we have different grown-ups in this equation. And I think our biggest struggle together has been how responsive we are and how we embed in how we prepare them for how our students have changed is absolutely essential to the success, not just of their training and their preparation, but how confident they will be in the classroom with some very different and more complex student behaviors and learning needs that have presented themselves since COVID. So I feel like we've really done that well, and the university in particular has grown with us in that. There was a time, really honestly, that I would have said pre-Hopewell, but I would have said that there was a disconnect and an issue with alignment with what we need in public schools and what our teachers and principals are being prepared to do and face. I think we've grown together and we have really narrowed that gap and improved that alignment exponentially. And but I think it involves trauma and mental health and how the work has changed and how we can best equip our teachers and our teachers' assistants and our apprentices and anybody else to be comfortable and confident in a very changed school setting than it was 4 or 5 years ago.
And I would only add, and thank you, Dr. Hackney, for those accolades. I think competency-based education is a little different. And so I don't want to give the impression that we didn't have to change at all. But there were minor changes, there are tweaks, I would say not large modifications, right? And so those tweaks did involve us making sure that we have a university professional that's there 4 or 5 times a week in the community, whereas they can provide assistance, special assistance, either with the coursework or with some of the demands of being an apprentice in the school division. And then the other small tweak is making sure these individuals still pass the assessments that the state put out there. And in some cases, because the individuals have not taken certain courses from us, we had to kind of modify and provide some additional support in order for them to be successful in those ways as well. But I think the key is working together, and the schoolhouse being honest with us, as well as us being honest with the candidates, so that we can make the appropriate changes and modifications that are going to best serve not only them, but the K through 12 student that they're serving, because that's really our customer.
I heard both of y'all talk about how these partnerships were really long-standing, and you didn't launch these most recent initiatives on the basis of nothing. There was a long history of trust and other partnership opportunities that came before. I'm curious, I think my guess is there are a lot of people on this call who are interested in learning about how do you even take that first step towards developing a partnership between district and university. So I'd love to hear what advice you all have for communities that are looking to engage in this type of partnership work and create that kind of alignment, Dr. Hackney, that you just talked about, but that allows the district and university to get closer together.
Well, I can put my superintendent spin on it, and this is another disclaimer. I wouldn't have said this 10 years ago, but I'm pre-retirement and have gotten a lot of confidence in that stage of my life. I think that we have to set our egos aside, and we have to recognize that we need each other, and that for both of our institutions to be the very best that they can be, we have to meet each other's needs. And I think that we can have courageous conversations when we can do better with that. And we certainly want to honor when we do that well. But I think at the root of this is we have to talk. Someone in the chat said something about bring back connection. And I thought of, the root of all of our work is relationships, right? We got to talk to each other. We got to negotiate. We got to compromise. Sometimes we've got to, be courageous and say things that might not feel really great, but we understand the heart of where we're coming, and we do what we need to do to make it best for the people that we serve. And I think that what we have in common in Hopewell and with Virginia State University is that this is our home. These are our students, and whether they're my students learning to get ready to go to college and become whatever they can become, or whether it's on the other end where the university is preparing the teachers to come help my babies get to their potential. But so I think that superintendents have egos, and I can say that, and I did too about 20 years ago, but I've learned I don't need that anymore. It works better without it. Get it out of the way. But I think that we come to relationship and connection. What brings us to this point, and we work together to make things better for both of our missions and our purpose, and it just works here. They know our struggles, I know their struggles, and we want the same thing. Our clients are the same, and we want the same thing for our students and for our outcomes. And we talk about the work, we push through the challenges, we get creative with our solutions, and we get it right for the babies and the adults that we're serving. So I know that sounds kind of pie in the sky, but it really is the root of everything. So to the person who talked about bring back connection as a basic value, it's about the connection and the relationship and how we come together to serve. So.
Both of these situations are sort of BG cities in our backyard. I think Hopewell is in Virginia State's backyard, right? So those really close connections, those are obvious. We do have connections and partnerships with other districts that are not close by. And I think the one thing, going back to I always try to find the silver lining from COVID, right? If there's anything we've learned, that we can connect in ways that you don't have to be right next door either. So there are ways to connect virtually. There are ways to connect across distances as well. We've done some online tutoring with different school districts. I don't know that it is completely as effective, but certainly they're seeing growth in their students as well. So I don't want to dismiss. I want to take those risks. I want to find out how we can serve more students. And if it means that we're delivering some in person and some online, whatever we can do to meet the needs of K-12 students and to give our pre-service teachers opportunities to learn and grow, we want to embrace those. So the conversation that Melody talked about, reaching out. So at BGSU, we have a field office. That's the first connection probably with us. But we certainly try to have lots of conversations with our partners and open up opportunities for conversations. We have lots of classroom teachers who have been classroom mentors for us, or principals, or our dean works a lot with superintendents just to ask the questions. We ask them a lot. What is it that you expect a pre-service teacher to be able to do when they leave us at BGSU? Because those expectations actually are a little bit different depending on the district. And it's being sure that we are being malleable enough that we can meet diverse needs of different communities as well. And as a large preparer of pre-service teachers, we graduate about 300 a year. We want to make sure that our students can be nimble to meet multiple demands. It is pushing faculty out of their comfort zone at the university. Before COVID, we probably could have just stuck in our little silo and done our things for another 10 years probably, but it really pushed us to think differently and probably in great ways to make sure that we were doing good things for K-12 students and for future teachers. So.
Yes, and I agree with Dr. Hackney as well as Tracy talking about the connections and the pieces that are there. It also starts with university staff listening to what our needs are. Our students who needed the most tutoring, when we were doing the virtual tutoring, would have to require someone to come pick them up because it's so hard. We're actually a pretty large district. Some of our students ride the bus for 45 minutes, to then all of a sudden, well, if this is the problem, how can we solve this? Let's figure out how to get these BGSU tutors at your building during school hours, so being able to listen and say, oh, this is the need, this is where it is. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, all right, what can we do to figure out how to fix that? So
I think we have time for one more question before we're going to open it up to the audience and see what questions they have. I'd love to hear from both partnerships. As you look ahead, what are some of the big priorities you all are thinking about in thinking about sustaining or expanding the partnership? And are there policy changes that would allow you to do that more easily?
You got quiet real quick. Yes. So I think yes. So I meet regularly with a group of superintendents in which we get some ideas from them as to things that they need. Superintendents and HR directors. Then I also have a council that really centers around STEM education that I hear from regularly. And based on some of those conversations, we've done some things in the STEM field a little bit differently for our candidates as well as for our surrounding school divisions. And in order to make this this kind of work sustainable, I think the one thing that we've really looked at is how much of this the school division can pick up and where can we pick up some things. And so we're partnering with another school division in a similar kind of way in which they are taking on a burden of paying the apprentices out of like substitute pay and things of that nature. That means that we had to find some ways in which we kept costs down for the candidates taking those courses or finishing those courses at the same time. But those kinds of conversations I think, come from us getting input from the school divisions and them being honest with us and saying, you know what I really would like to see is this, or this would really help us. And from those conversations, we are really able to do a lot of things. Now, the one policy change I would suggest, though, in order for our work to continue in the way that it's going, is mentor teachers should be paid as mentor and experienced university professionals. They are helping us bridge the gap between what those individuals don't know and what we want them to know by the time a year or 2 years lapse. And so the policy has to be to pay mentor teachers like we would expect administrators or other university supervisors that go out and supervise this kind of work. And that has to typically come from the state in saying that this work is important. And if we're going to continue this kind of partnership, the one way that we can continue to support both school divisions as well as universities is by helping compensate those that take on interns and serve as mentor teachers to apprentices.
What about on the Bowling Green side? Big priorities over the next few years. Any suggestions for policy changes that might support the work?
As for policy changes, we've gone through quite a bit with the science of reading. So, we're talking about some of our teaching staff doing 30 hours over the summer. So, it's a lot. And I think that we're, maybe speak for Tracy here. I think we're both kind of like taking a deep breath as we're easing through some of this and still walking through. But I do know some things that that we see that are needed here in the field is, a reading center, some center that can help kids throughout what would be the summer months or after school help. We used to have some of those locally. When COVID happened, they dried up and they left. So, we have parents who are sometimes sitting here going, what do I do? Well, here's a perfect opportunity. And let's be honest, with some of our reading specialists that we have in our school and our classroom, I mean, they are specialists. They are top tier, to be able to start with some of the BGSU tutors, some of our teacher tutors to pick those skills up to then it's a needed field here. It's a needed field. And we are seeing that in teacher shortage. So.
And Valerie,
sorry.
Go ahead.
One of the big policy changes we saw here in Ohio recently was that pre-service teachers are now allowed to be paid during their student teaching semester, which was a huge shift in Ohio. So I saw a question in the chat, are students paid for this tutoring work they do? No, it's part of their field practicum hours, but we are looking for models around a reading center. Once the students have been trained and gotten through this practicum experience, they can then be paid tutors to serve that additional need as well. So at least we know that they are well trained. We do this in reading and math, so both content areas have pretty big needs in our area as well. I think policy, I don't know if it's policy changes. One thing that I continually fight for, I guess, is to change the messaging around educators. They work so hard and there's so much negativity out there right now. I just keep hoping in everything that we do with politicians in our state and nationally that we continue to recognize the profession for the amount of time and effort that teachers put in to really provide quality experiences for all children. And we have to keep putting that out forefront, I think.
And that's a perfect segue. I'm so glad you went first, because I think one of our greatest challenges is because of that. We have a crisis that 20 years ago, the University of Virginia predicted. They said, we do not have, 20 years ago, y'all, we do not have enough teacher candidates coming through Virginia institutions to meet the need on the other end of public school vacancies. They knew that 20 years ago and have worked on it, but I'm not sure. We all know what's happened. So I think that, that we have to look at what is this crisis rooted in, and how do we re-engage even our young kids, like in public schools, K-12, to say there's honor in this profession and it's fun, and really work hard to get more people interested, but then we have to change too. We've got to take some responsibility for some of that lack of professionalism and some of the negativity that has, I probably wouldn't have said this 10 years earlier either, guys, but that has become a part of our narrative. You know, we've got to be what we want other people, how other people want to see us. And I would say this with respect to the question around the policy change. I hope this is the case in other states. I kind of stay in my own little place, so I'm not sure. But in Virginia, we have a state superintendent right now and a governor that are very, very supportive of really being radically crazy with respect to alternative routes to licensure. And if that's not the case in your state, I would strongly advocate that you figure out how to emulate that, because we're still having conversations and it's not perfect, but we're finally, you know, and we used to be one of the hardest to get licensure, the highest standards for the tests and, you know, all that. But it took this almost catastrophic situation for us to realize that we can do this differently, golly gee, maybe even better, but differently and quicker, and help fix this problem that we have that I worry. I'm pre-retirement, so at any point I can go tag, but I really worry what's going to happen in the future, because it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And if you look at systems like mine, and I'm selfish because I'm all about Hopewell, but people aren't knocking the door down to come work in my city. We have to work hard to just against all the good stuff, to convince people that this is the best place to work and the right place to work. And we really do work hard on that. But at the end of the day, I think we have got to have some flexibility at the state level and the federal level. They've got to help us with this, because right now, 1 in 3 of my teachers are not licensed. 1 in 3 are not even provisionally.
Yeah.
That means they're not even eligible for a provisional certificate in Virginia. They have a bachelor's degree in something. And we've got to help them get there to teach our next generation of children. So I'm all over and thankful for university partnerships to help us do that. But at the end of the day, in terms of policy, we've got to have a state system that will help us reroute and look at this very differently than we ever had. And let's be honest, public education is one of the most difficult institutions to change and think outside of the box, but we're at the crisis point where we don't have any choice. And this is a perfect example. We said we are going to take these TAs and we're going to tutor and we're going to do things differently because we have to. And so maybe we can turn it around and look at it as the opportunity that it is. It is critical, but that's when people come to the table and say, we got a problem solving. We've got to figure this out. And so I would strongly suggest that the conversations also include your state legislature, because that's where we have found some flexibility to look at the reality that we can't keep looking at licensure and highly qualified the same way we always had, or we're not going to have the bodies to fill the position. So,
And I think that's why I'm so glad the 2 partnerships represented here are here, because it is in the work that you all are doing together that gives me hope that, this crisis that we're seeing in many different places around the country starts to get addressed. It's in the ways that you all are talking about coming together and building trust and having courageous conversations and being flexible and reimagining the ways that you're doing things, both to create a pathway that works for adults who might really want to get into the profession and can't figure out the way to do that. And really thinking about making sure that those adults are prepared well, so that once they get into the classroom, they're going to stay and not kind of burn out their first October, right? So I'm just appreciative to you all for being here and sharing your thoughts today, and for all the incredible work that you're doing in order to kind of model this, what this could look like. We are going to turn it over to Q&A from the audience now. So please post your questions in the Q&A box, and I'm going to turn it over to Emily, who's going to help facilitate this part of the conversation.
Hi, I also wanted to share that we just posted our feedback poll, and I just want to say how seriously we take your feedback. We talk about it every week, so please take a few minutes, keep listening to the discussion, but please take a few minutes to quickly enter your responses to our questions in the feedback poll. So lots of good questions and lots of good questions that have been answered. So thank you to all of our awesome, awesome panelists for answering some of the questions. And I'm gonna go to some that have not yet been answered first, and then I'm gonna go to some of the ones that have been answered because I think they're good for conversation. And I'm gonna start with this one from Nikita that actually relates to a question that was from Sherry about, so she says, as a former teacher, it was my hope 20 years ago that there were these partnerships that would have supported pre-service teachers to gain classroom experience. For the past decade, we've attempted multiple times to create partnerships to offer our after-school learning center as a learning site for teachers. What would be some concrete steps we can take at the district, community college, university levels to help build sites for practice while providing employment? And Sherry's question was, how can after-school staff be involved in the partnerships and the tutoring and things like that? So it's kind of like thinking about those after-school sites and what would that take?
Well, I think starting small, understanding that universities are pulled in a lot of different directions, but we have an outstanding field clinical coordinator in Dr. Shelley Bazemore, who listens to a lot of different community needs, and through her both advocacy for every child as well as looking at different experiences that our candidates can get. She has partnered with certain faculty to say, you know what, this particular experience would go well with what you're teaching and or what is being presented in your course. And in most cases, the faculty member says, sounds like a great idea as long as they do this. And so I think reaching out to those field clinical coordinators in the university College of Educations, typically, I think you can find those kinds of partnerships. And you might want to start small, but they usually can grow into things much larger, like what we've done. Tracy,
So
I
I
saw you
will,
nodding as well.
yep, I will echo everything that you said and add the thing that we run into the most is something that I chatted about a little bit earlier with our the schedule is the challenging piece. So our candidates are often in schools during the day because they need to be to meet our teacher education requirements. And so these after school programs are actually some of the most difficult for us to staff because our students are actually taking classes during that time. So when they're in the field during the day, their classes tend to be later in the afternoon or the evening. We have been able to shift some of that around. Again, it takes time to build that into the schedule and build the purpose and the meaning making for that. Everyone, we get a lot of opportunities for our candidates, but our candidates can only handle so many opportunities as well. So making sure there's good conversations about what the students will be gaining in each of those opportunities is critical for us. So those conversations are really important to begin with.
We also had a couple of questions about the science of reading. So Anne Blankenhorn, and we had an anonymous attendee. So how are you using the science of reading? How are you preparing tutors to understand the science of reading? What is the role there? And
So we have, I don't know that we have been using the strategies and ideals behind science of reading for a long time. Ohio has moved to adopt fully science of reading curriculum. So the state of Ohio has changed, or I don't know, I'm going to use whatever words, Zeb, you can fill in, has encouraged districts to choose new curriculum this year and last year and has supported that with money, maybe not fully covering that new curriculum, but supporting quite a bit of new curriculum for our K-12 students. So again, just like we bought the curriculum from Crim Elementary, we've also bought some of the other statewide approved curriculum for our students to look at in other courses. Certainly, we do a lot of practice in our teacher education classes. They're required to take a 12-hour core of reading coursework in Ohio, and that 12-hour core is really around the fundamentals of the science of reading. So they get quite a bit of coursework and practical application in the field.
Yeah, the practical application is definite. You know, we have tutor groups that are meeting with students for 20 or 30 minutes every day. So, you know, it definitely helps, and making sure we, of course, have our reading specialist overseeing to make sure that what they're doing, what they've planned is where it needs to be and aligns with the science of reading. So, yeah.
And I think you'll find that most of your traditional programs have been using the science of reading tenets
Right.
for years now. It's a misnomer because we have so many
Right.
provisionally licensed or other program teachers out there that I think those are the ones we got to find professional development to really bridge the gap between where they are and what they need to know regarding
Right.
the science of reading.
And Willis, you already answered this in the chat, but it's a great question from Susie. How did the role of university-based teacher education change, for instance, using different methods and syllabi to reflect the practice-based model, or maybe spending more time in the field with the apprentices? So if you want to share what you put in the chat or anything else.
Yeah, so I'll just espouse a little bit on that. For those that didn't see it, I just said we tweaked some of the key assignments for our courses a little bit. The syllabi didn't change because I want to make sure we understand this is not a cheat code. This is not a way to get around the standards. We are looking at this as competency-based assessment, that we are building everything into this degree that is in all of our traditional path degrees and or our initial master's program that leads to initial licensure. That the candidates still have to hit all the same competencies. And once they've hit those competencies, though, we've kind of checked those off along the way so that we can say that those candidates then can get an additional pay and or additional time towards some other tasks that they don't necessarily have that same level of confidence around. And so it's more of us just tweaking some of the syllabi, but not really changing the major tenets of the syllabus.
And Tracy, I want to hear your response too, but also folks are really wanting to come visit your apprenticeship. Melody, you kind of offered that up in response to a question, but so is there somebody they could contact, or how can people who are in the area that want to be able to come and observe and visit you all, how can they do that?
I'm happy to put my email in the chat.
Thank you. There
And
you
we
go.
can find out what those professional development days are, Valerie, that for the design, learning by scientific design, so that we can maybe invite them to some of those activities as well.
Yeah,
That's great.
thank you. And then Tracy, did you have anything to add about the changing of the coursework and the syllabi?
So I think what it allowed us to do, this particular shift with the tutoring model, it has allowed students to have, because it's the same curriculum in the same district, it's allowed us to have better classroom conversations with more explicit instruction for our candidates. So they're able to talk across models. It also has our teacher educators in the field even more than they had been before. So they are out watching our candidates teach, and they're able to draw on specific experiences that they noted during those observations, which I think has been really impactful. I don't know that the syllabi, tweaked with some assignments, but we really did build in this practicum time as part of a separate course for candidates. So I don't know that it changed our core curriculum as far as assignments do and those sorts of things.
Right. And Tracy, you can go to this question too. Ambler was asking, and I know you responded already, but I think it's a good question. So what about engaging college students in the tutoring who are not already in the teacher prep program, but might have the potential? How are you doing the outreach to the others who are
Yeah.
not already making that selection?
So Bowling Green has had a long-standing America Reads program where we have college students who serve as tutors, but maybe not the high dosage tutoring that happens through America Reads. And through that program, we're able to connect with people who might I really like this. I think I might be interested in being a teacher. We do see students who transition over. One of the things that our faculty members are working on at BGSU that Zeb referred to is having this reading center. So we're looking for ways to rebuild our reading center to have maybe sort of tiered interventions. So you just need someone who has this level of training to work with your student, or you need someone with more intensive experiences who might do a deeper dive, who might need, really specific interventions for a candidate. And maybe that tiered approach could involve some college students who might not want to be teachers, but are still interested in working with youth versus those who might want to be classroom teachers who have more of those intensive skills that they might be able to use. So we could sort of build a tiered model depending on what parents might be seeking for their students. So that's the model we're looking at, hoping to get off the ground next year. So these things take a lot of, university life is slow to change, I'm sorry to say, but we're working as fast as we can.
Yeah. Willis, any other thoughts on that, on kind of engaging the non-teacher track students in your apprenticeships or your tutoring?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we did not necessarily prepare for is how many students either said they were going to definitely stay in our program because of the opportunity to maybe do an apprenticeship in Hopewell or in one of our other school divisions, as well as candidates that said, tell me a little bit more about this apprenticeship program where you get paid in your last year or last semester of teaching. And so for many of our candidates, especially in the areas of math and science, it was clear that they did not want to tack on a minor in education to get certified because they knew that that would be a semester in which they would have to do an internship, work all day and not get paid, and not be able to participate in their typical job that was paying for their coursework. And so those things it is true that many students are really grappling with doing an unpaid internship in a semester, and that has really priced us out of getting some very good teachers.
Yeah. And I think this is a great question from Cliff Moon. How are the educator candidates informed about and empowered to reach out to the parents and families that are historically marginalized within the public school system? And in general, how is parent engagement part of the teacher preparation?
I think I answered that, but only from our lens.
Yeah.
But you're thinking at the university level, how is it embedded in the?
Yes.
Well, we're actually working with Dr. Hackney and her HR and other faculty or family engagement people in the district to see how we can gauge some of or assess how well some of this is bringing back students and getting their attendance up, as well as what other things we can do to partner together, especially at the schools in which we have the apprentice, to make sure that the level of engagement is stronger with this kind of partnership. And so that is something that we have been working with Dr. Sade Harris at our university, that's also associated with Harvard, to make sure that the candidates that we're putting out there are also getting the first class experience as it relates to family engagement.
So we actually have a whole course developed to family engagement at BGSU that our candidates take and get lots of experience. But we also put all of our candidates through something called immersion simulation. So it's working with avatars, which it's a little hard to explain, but they're actually able to practice in an avatar environment, having conversations with parents about how students are doing, about standardized test scores, about behavior they might have, and really engage in sort of a practice scenario with a live avatar. So they get some practice with it. It's actually the thing that is most stressful for our students is those first conversations with parents. They really are, particularly post-COVID, I will say, really anxious about those adult conversations. So having the opportunity to practice those in an environment that is safe, that they can say stop simulation and start over again and repractice again, and get feedback from our faculty on how they can improve those conversations has really been a game changer for us at BGSU. So our students, I think, have appreciated those opportunities.
I think that most of the students have been in the TBTs, have heard a parent phone conversation or have helped draft even an email and see how that kind of works. So we really kind of encourage our teachers to come alongside the BGSU tutors to make sure that they see how it's done, how to go ahead and address, because there is some nuance to that. And I think it's been helpful for them gaining confidence to be able to do it in the future.
Great. So this was a question that I'm not sure if this makes sense to anybody, but Katie had asked about states that have new teacher induction programs, required new teacher induction programs. Melody, you might have mentioned a little bit about this in Virginia, but just wondering how teacher prep programs align with those new teacher induction programs. Any thoughts on that?
The only thing I would say is that I think there was greater alignment pre-COVID. You know what I mean? I think we probably, it's a great question. I think we probably need to think about that because it has just changed dramatically. I mean, right now, again, just in my case, 1 in 3 of the people sitting there as new teachers has never had an education class. So it's got to look different. So we have not yet, at least in Hopewell, reached out to the university, but I think it's a great question and has some great potential to look at how we can work together on that. It is a very intensive program for our new teachers here that we've developed kind of in isolation, but just uniquely to Hopewell. But I think it's a great question to consider working together on that because it's just like everything else. It's changed dramatically, with what we have to teach you and prepare you for that looks a lot differently today than it did in 2019.
And I was going to say we have a unique. I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
Dr.
You're
Clark.
fine.
I was just going to say we have a unique induction ceremony for those candidates after internship and after they've completed their practice apprenticeship program. Those individuals do a fantastic job, or our field clinical coordinator does a fantastic job of bringing them all together and celebrating them going into the field and make sure that they are promising themselves to that community in which they're serving. But a lot of cuts have, that has taken on a lot of cuts over the years, largely in part because either school divisions aren't supporting it at the same level, or the universities aren't, or there isn't the additional funding in order to do those kinds of activities together. And so I think you'll see that if we can really, focus on greater funding and partnership towards the end of a candidate's program, that you can bring that back to where it was pre-COVID.
Well, we are at 4:30 and I can't say thank you enough. Valerie, your moderation was beautiful. This was incredible to learn about your partnerships and so inspiring. Hopefully everybody on this call, and thank you to all of our audience members, really, really good questions that you shared with us. And thank you to our panelists for responding to the questions, and then we could also discuss them. Really great session. We have our slide up. I posted the registration links in the chat. All of our upcoming sessions, please do. We also shared our, in addition to our survey about today, we have an additional survey. It's been posted in the chat a few times where we're looking for more feedback from you all. So thank you to everybody. And we're already a minute over, so I won't take any more of your time. Thanks very much to all of you. This has been incredible. And we look forward to the next time. Thank you so much.